Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Box Trick. I'm your host, Matt Brady. Joining me, as always, is Thomas the Motos Davis and Alan Thomas. And today we are going to be talking about tactical RPGs. So, Thomas, you're the expert. What exactly is a tactical RPG?
Well, a tactical RPG is, well, a role-playing game that involves tactical layout. So instead of controlling a small group of members that may be in like a Final Fantasy game would stand on one side of the screen and attack over to the other side, what you have is an actual battle map that you can move them along and fight among. So everything from impassable terrain to area effect abilities actually having an area of effect, all of that gets kind of brought into one actual scenario.
Okay. I think it's pretty easy to identify because most of the tactical RPGs I can think of have the word tactics in them.
It
such
is a
as game
common name.
yes,
Yeah.
Quite a few
such
video
as
games.
games like Final Fantasy Tactics and Tactics Ogre.
Final Fantasy Tactics Advanced.
It's true.
Advanced? Whatever.
Right. Okay. Well, I know that both of you guys kind of have a game series you want to talk about, and it's actually kind of a newer game series. So, I'll pass it to you guys.
Yeah, XCOM, both Enemy Within and Enemy Unknown. I think Enemy Unknown was the expansion.
And
Um,
to be fair, XCOM's not necessarily new. I mean, we had XCOM, UFO Defense, Terror from the
right.
Deep, and uh, whoop, drop something off my desk. Awesome. And then XCOM Apocalypse, which is pretty much the best of the originals, depending on who you ask.
And I think there's like a third-person action one that came out somewhere in
There,
there that was very
there was a
terrible.
there was a third-person shooter. There was a like an actual flying like flight sim one, which was it was not bad, not nearly as bad as the third person shooter one. And then more recently there was XCOM, and then there is an expansion, Enemy Within. Um, and then there was the third person shooter that they made that was in like the 40s,
Oh yeah,
and
this
yeah,
it didn't
what
it didn't
Bureau
do so
Bureau,
well.
that's what it is. Yeah, it did not do so well, and for good reasons. It wasn't the greatest of games.
But these two specifically, the recent one and the expansion for it, they came out on pretty much every current platform: Xbox, PS3, and computer, which was pretty unique for a game like that to be launched. What you would think as a pure PC game, so it's pretty accessible to everyone. And just the replayability of it was pretty fun, and it had a
Oh yeah.
pretty deep level of choice as far as what you chose to do, as far and like the type of weapons you would go with or the type of troops you would use. And I thought that was my favorite part of it, was that you could play it again and just go a whole different route with how you chose to fight
Right.
against the aliens.
The
Right.
the nice part about that depth, though, I mean, compared to the older games, they really scaled down the complexity and removed a lot of the superfluous choices, and all a lot of just tedious kind of busy work and micromanagement they removed. Yet they didn't actually harm the depth of the game at all, which was honestly outstanding. And I think that's one of the reasons why it did even close to as well as it did.
Yeah, it
But I mean,
definitely felt very streamlined and solid.
it was a nice experience all around, and there were some kind of what's the best way to say it? There was some sort of there were some things that didn't quite make sense or was never really explained, but didn't even seem to matter. Like the only stats that were really worth paying attention to on your characters were like will and aim. Those are the only two that mattered. I mean, aim was how well they could actually shoot their guns, and will was how well they could withstand psychic attacks, and of course whether or not they'd have psychic abilities once you unlock that section of gameplay.
Right.
But
Yeah, I do remember the recruits having like a randomly rolled, like I guess you could look at that like potential. If you rolled one
yeah,
with crappy aim, you basically just were like, "See ya."
yeah, pretty much you're just like, and there's the door.
Right.
But I mean, at the same time though, there was also along with that game. and just how well it was, it also kind of inspired a small modding community to do some pretty amazing things with it. Like there was XCOM: The Long War, which was an expansion that essentially made the game much longer, much harder, gave you even more variety in terms of weapons and characters and abilities and what certain things do. Uh, and just kind of they added like some new maps, which was really cool, and just kind of extended everything. And I can't wait for the sequel, which they're actually going to be making. I think it releases in December.
February.
I want to say February.
It's February. Yeah, it was
Okay.
originally November and it got pushed back. Now it's slated for
Okay.
February 5th.
Right.
But this one is going to be only PC, which overall I think is probably a good choice.
Yeah.
I don't think we necessarily noticed some of the things that were limited by making it all console and PC. But what they're talking about is procedurally generated levels, so much more variety in the levels, which I think would be
That
pretty
would be
freaking
welcome.
sweet.
Oh yeah.
Right. The thing I kind of liked about XCOM, I mean, I only played it very, very briefly. My brother was super into it. I really liked the cover system and like the cover, like just, compared to other tactical RPGs, because you're using, it's more guns. Like one of the games I'm going to talk about, and this is an example of, say, like, let me see here, like Fire Emblem. Like in Fire Emblem, it's like, it's tactical, but essentially you get down to that point to where it's just goes into like what you would consider like a Final Fantasy battle screen, where you just like run up to your enemy and then you fight. But in this, because you're using guns and stuff, I just thought it was like a cool mechanic. It just worked really well.
It really did, and it was also one of those kind of they removed the complexity since in the original ones you had a variety of stances, and that's actually pretty common for any tactical RPG that involves firearms. You're gonna have like a standing, a crouching, and a prone. Um, and essentially, what cover was anything you can get your character behind.
Yeah.
Now you actually have a specific system where it's like, okay, I know that's going to protect my guys a lot better than that cover, and that cover is going to protect my guys better than not having any cover at all. All I have to do is get my guys up to it, which was definitely really, really nice. I mean, I do kind of miss some of the ridiculous things you could pull with the stance system. Like I've seen some absolutely absurd lucky shots in the original XCOM. Just like he never would have made if he was standing, but since he was laying prone, he could shoot under things and that sort of stuff. But taking out that complexity definitely helped the game be more polished and much easier to approach.
Right.
So it definitely was a welcome change, although I'm sure a lot of the more hardcore tactics fans kind of missed it.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, we're gonna see even more changes soon with the second one, and if you really missed the more stance option stuff, I believe there are mods that take care of that as well. So I mean, it definitely has options.
Mm-hmm.
But
And it always, of course, with any kind of percentage based, it shows you the percentage, and then
oh yep,
your 97% fails, and the
Right.
next turn, Mouton walks over and
boops your sniper. Yep. Oh yeah. Oh, that pure rage of going, oh, I got my captain sniper, the one I've been working on so hard up in the trees. Oh, and a floater jump behind him. Oh, and he doesn't have a reaction shot. Oh, and he's dead.
Yeah.
Or or missing a grenade and killing your own dude with it.
Yep.
Never change XCOM.
The greatness of percentages.
Oh.
Okay. All right. Well, moving on. One of the games I want to talk about, well, really the only game I'm going to talk about, is one of the very first games I got for my Sega Genesis back in the day, and I actually still have my original cart, and that is Shining Force.
Oh yeah.
Essentially, Sega's answer to Nintendo's Fire Emblem. Shining Force is kind of what I would consider the easier version of Fire Emblem, because in Shining Force, if your members die during battle, they don't die forever. Which,
at least not in the first one. I believe in the second and third one they did though. You might have had the choice to resurrect them, but I definitely remembered that certain characters, if you didn't do something soon enough, would die and they'd be gone.
Right. Yeah, I can't remember. It's been a long time since I played the second one. I just don't like the second one nearly as much as the first one.
It has problems.
Yeah. But anyway, so one of the things I really like about the Shining Force games was it was really one of the first, RPGs, tactical RPGs, one that I played. And two, I really liked the fact that a lot of the characters were like hidden, like secrets, and you had to like go unlock them. And then it was really cool just being like, I can increase my team all these different ways by finding these different characters and stuff like that. And it was just one of the first RPGs that I'd played that was like that. One of the other things I think that's really cool is I like that the characters have essentially their leveling up system. So they all have like different roles, like mage, mage, warrior, whatever. And then like as you get like a certain level, you can like turn them into like a new, more powerful class, and their animations are different, and they're obviously much stronger and stuff like that. And it was just like super cool. Back in the day when I was doing this as like a young kid, being like, oh man, this is awesome, because a lot of the other RPGs you played around that time, your characters were just the same, like character animations and sprites and everything throughout. Plus, I mean, it's a Sega game. You've always got that Sega charm to games. But yeah, it was just really cool because essentially there is no world map. Like the world map is you are like always fighting battles. So you just go out, like when you play like Final Fantasy or something, you go out and then you would run around and then you'd get involved into a battle. But in Shining Force, it just seemed like every time you went out into the world map, it was like in a battle. So it was just like really cool. And then as you would fight people in different terrains, the sprite animation or the backgrounds when you fought them would change based upon the terrain you were in, which was cool. Just like like in other games they have that, but it's all one big battle, so that had that going on. Did either of you guys play Shining Force? I'm thinking.
I think
I played
one of the ones on Xbox or something.
So
I'm
Xbox
thinking,
360.
as I'm talking about,
The-
I'm clearly thinking
The Shining Force.
no.
The Shining Force I played was 3. That was the one I spent the most
Oh,
time
wow.
on for Sega Saturn.
The Sega
I
Saturn
didn't
one.
have it for. I didn't have it for the Saturn. I was playing an emulated copy much later on.
Right.
Because, good lord, if you can find a Saturn copy of
Oh, God, yeah.
Shining Force 3, you have just spent like $1,000.
Yeah, it's not cheap. And the sad thing is that Shining Force 3, only part of it was released in the U.S.
It's true.
So
Like,
you have to track
all of it.
down either a repro or a translated version, or buy like one of the translator carts for your Saturn. It's not
Yeah.
it's there's a lot of workarounds to do it, and unless you're a collector, it can become quite cumbersome.
Ugh, yeah, I still want to obtain a translator cart and the extra discs for Shining Force,
Right.
and Shining Force 3 itself.
Right.
But that was the game I spent the most time on, and good lord, getting the fucking penguin, and then getting the penguin to a point where he's usable,
Mm-hmm.
it has been the worst struggle of my life.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. No.
'cause,
Yes.
I mean, Shining Force 3, like, special characters, when you get them, start at level 1,
Yeah.
no matter where you are.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know if that was like the same in the first one, where like you get a special character, like, yeah, this guy looks awesome.
I
Why
think
is he
they
level
were.
1?
I think they were scaled kind of to where you were. I can't remember. It's been a while since I've played. But Shining Force 1 has the robotic armadillo, who is a boss, who's so much fun. And the cool thing about Shining Force is that it is incredibly easy to obtain. They did a remake of it for the Game Boy Advance. It's also in like the Sonic.
They did, didn't they?
Yeah, it's in the Sonic Ultimate Genesis Collection, which you can pick up on Xbox 360 or PS3.
Wait, is it?
Yep.
Oh shit! I have a copy of Shining Force 1. I have no excuse not
I think
to play
Shining
it now.
Force 1 and 2 are in that.
Really?
Yeah. Now, I will say the chronology of Shining Force is kind of difficult to come around, because Shining Force 1 and 2 technically take place in the same world. And there's also a game that came before it, which is called Shining in the Darkness.
Yeah, that was that weird kind of like.
And it's like a dungeon crawler almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the Shining Force series is like kind of all over the place, because then they made games for the PS2 like Shining Force Neo and Shining Force EXA, and those are like action RPGs. I don't even know how to describe them. And like one of those is like a reimagining of Shining Force. the story is kind of difficult to come by, especially because at the time, like, translations weren't always the best. Even for like full project games released by Sega and Nintendo and everybody at that time. So it's kind of difficult to kind of piece together, but it's a great throwback, and actually it's still a good RPG today. I play it all the time. I mean, by all the time I mean like, every time I get a new computer or something. Every time I get a new computer and I inevitably download all my emulators and ROMs, I'm always like, yeah, I'll pop in. I'll load up Shining Force.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, I think you guys have another game series. You guys probably will both talk about it quite a bit.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Disgaea.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Oh yeah.
Alan's in the distance there.
A new Disgaea game just came out.
Sure did.
Did it just come
Sci-fi.
out? I thought it was coming out like in a couple weeks.
No, I think it was 2 weeks back, beginning of the month.
God damn, I'm so like out of sequence. The only thing I'm thinking about is Fallout 4, and that's still actually what that's like. Fuck, I don't even know what that comes out. God damn, November 10th. That's when it's coming out. Anyways, Disgaea.
Yes, Disgaea 5 just came out.
Okay. Well, shit, that's more money I'm gonna have to spend at some point.
It got an 8.7 out of 10, and that's just the first review I found. That was IGN's review.
No, well, that sounds about right for a Disgaea game.
Yeah.
Disgaea never rates like 9s and 10s, but it's always been like
it's not
solid.
a popular genre. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But
but they're all great. There's not been one that's been like terrible compared to the rest. So that's sort of a unique feature to that franchise, is that no matter which one you get, it's gonna be good.
Oh yeah. And nowadays with like the eShops, you don't have to worry about discs not being available anymore, like you did have to worry about with the original one.
Yeah.
Because Atlas titles were so hard to find back then. But that game series has been an amazing tactics game. It has easily one of the most broken stat systems I've ever seen, where you can just keep leveling a character, bring them back to level 1, increase all their base stats up to maximum, level them up again, and just destroy everything.
Yeah, for those people familiar with the term like munchkining in role-playing games, it's definitely a game about doing that. It's maxing the possible power, and just you can play and put so many hours into it just to get a character like super really major strong, and there's no real cap.
Yeah.
To like at the point where you're not getting any stronger.
Oh yeah.
Like I think the full level cap in the first game was 9,999, which you could then bring back to level 1, have a bunch of like bonus stat points that you can use to just max out their base stuff.
Yeah.
And just do it all over again.
Yeah. I have a friend that I work with, and I briefly played the Disgaea games, and one day we were talking about just games we'd spent the most hours in. And he had mentioned that he had spent like, around 100 hours in Disgaea. I was like, wow, that's a lot of hours. And he was like, not really. Like,
yeah. I was when you said 100 hours, of like, really, that was it?
Yeah. Like, not really, man. Like, yeah.
Like,
well, go ahead, Thomas.
I was gonna say, and it's not even just the characters that you can level up and just make monstrous. There's also a system called the item world, where essentially items have specific levels. And everything from the most basic healing item to the most serious endgame weapon, you can go into the item levels to upgrade and get stat boosting characters that you can then switch between items to enhance an item for a specific character to make them even better.
Right.
And even then, it goes even further, because in later games you can encounter certain events inside the item worlds that'll give you even better boosts or even better stats or even some more special items, and it just kept going.
How many Disgaea games are there?
There's
6. Oh, because there's one through
there's
1 through 4, and then D2, A Brighter Darkness, and now Alliance of Vengeance. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. And then there was like
there's a handful of spin-off games.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, like there's a Prinny one on PSP,
which was awesome.
Right, and it looks like the first game was remade a couple of times, like released onto PSP and Nintendo DS.
Yeah.
Yep.
Afternoon of Darkness instead of Hour of Darkness or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah. So the one thing I would recommend with these games is to play the first ones first, just because the later ones add so many more features that if you play them first, you're gonna feel kind of bored going back and playing the earlier ones. And it's a lot cooler to play them through in a way where, like, after you beat the first one, you're like, wow, that was awesome. And then you play the second one, you're like, wow, there's even more in this. And then third
Yeah.
and so
Well,
on. So
and even then, like some of the later stuff, there's a lot of complexity there. So starting out on the earlier ones where there's not that much to kind of build a base level for yourself is
yeah,
always
with things like the council and like you were talking about the item world and trying to get all the little item
like
heroes or whatever put in the right item to superpower it.
yep,
And then the throwing systems, that I think
yes,
that was like the most unique part of this game for me, is not only is it a tactical RPG, but it's also a puzzle game because
yeah,
you're
like
trying to get, basically the item worlds are randomly generated each level, and there's like your starting point, and there's sometimes a, depending on the later games, there's a bonus exit, and then there's the regular exit that just takes you down to the next floor, and you essentially have to get through 10 floors to get the bonuses, leveled up on the item. And there's parts where you can't win, like the way the
it's
grid
not
is
gonna
set up, there's geo panels that make the enemies invulnerable, and you
that
just, so what you end up having to do is just move out enough guys that you can pick up to a tower of like 6 people, and the bottom person just throws the 5 on top of him, and then the fifth guy throws the 4 on top of him, the fourth guy throws the 3, and eventually you land on the exit to move down, and you don't have to do any fighting, but you
yep.
have to kind of line it up, and it feels like a puzzle game, and that's a really cool feature to have in a tactical RPG.
And a quick explanation of those geopanels. Essentially, when and this happens even just in the regular story mode missions, there are glowing panels on the battle map that will have different stat effects when a specific, essentially a little pyramid-looking thing sits on them that gives them benefits. Everything from enemy boosts to hero boosts to bonus damage to poison to cloning, which is easily the best and the worst thing to get. You can just clone an enemy repeatedly, but it can also clone your allies and turn them into enemies. So, whoops, I left my level 99 or 999 Laharl on a clone panel. Now the world map there, the battle map's filled with angry clones.
Oh no.
Yeah, it can get bad, but it also has a system where you can destroy these panels, and destroying them increases your bonus gauge, allowing you to get bonus items at the end of the level. And you do that by essentially setting up the pyramids, since there's usually multiple, in such a way where if you destroy one, it sets off a chain reaction. Because when you destroy one, it changes all the panels that it sits on to the same color as the pyramid. So every panel has a different color, and every pyramid has a different color. And if you get it works right, one pyramid will change all the colors, or all of one color to its color, destroying another pyramid, which will then continue the chain reaction, turning all the panels that it sits on to that color, and so on and so forth until eventually you destroy the one that essentially blanks out all the panels, giving you a huge bonus and most likely killing anything sitting on those panels.
Right, yeah. Each panel, every time it pops from killing the color that changes it, it does damage to anything on it. And if you manage to erase all the panels, the explosion at the end hits all the enemies on the map and does a lot of damage.
Yep. It has a lot of complexity and a lot of different ways of doing things in such a beautiful little package. And the story and characters are pretty great too.
They're always really funny. They're not
They
necessarily like super deep stories, but they're totally comedic. And
my favorite remains the Prism Rangers.
the Prism Rangers are great.
Think Power Rangers, except lazy assholes, and they don't have any friends. In fact, that's their reason for invading the Netherworld, is because they don't have any friends.
Yeah, I mean that's one thing I've spent very little time in Disgaea, but that's one thing I've noticed is like the game. They're funny, and like they have really good like unique characters. Like I don't know. I haven't really spent enough time in Disgaea to really.
Well, even their stories are just like kind
Right.
of silly. So the first one, you play like the son of the former overlord, and
Right.
you're trying to gain back all of his power so that you can take over. And the second one, I think you're a human. I don't remember the story of that one all that well. And the third one, you're like a student at the Netherworld University, and it's like the absence of justice is because about being like tardy from class and stuff.
Yep.
They're all really
They're
funny.
very Japanese.
The stories are really
Yes.
short. Like you can beat most of the stories in under 15 to 10 hours, but
The-
that's
the
not
ni-
really the point of the game.
Yeah, and the nice thing is a lot of those there's a lot of like side stories too. Like in the first game, there's the whole trying to become the next overlord of the Netherworld and kind of taking over. But then there's also a side story where you kind of learn, oh, the reason why the Overlord was such an important guy and the original Overlord was such an important guy in a Netherworld was because he was holding back an even stronger Overlord from another Netherworld, and that goes into that story, and just side stories everywhere. So, while the main story may take you a few hours to get through, the side stories may take you even longer and have even harder challenges. Like the Overlord story has enemies that are like well into the deep thousands in level. Like it could get pretty ridiculous pretty quick.
Okay.
Excellent games. Definitely, if you haven't played any of these, or if there's one you haven't played, it's worth playing. They're all worth playing.
Yeah, sounds like I need.
And
to
they're
play.
really
Yeah.
accessible.
Sounds like I need to play some Disgaea. That's really
You
what.
should.
Yeah, I think I have. I think I own one of them in my massive collection of video games. I think I own one for the I think I own the one for the PSP. So I'll have to give that a try. But moving on, Thomas, I believe you have another game.
I do. So the game I'd like to go ahead and talk about next, since we have a Fallout game coming out soon, it might be good to talk about the Fallout Tactics game that came out in this here video.
Wait,
So
is this a tactics game?
it is a
I think
tactics
so.
game.
I think so.
In fact, you can tell it's a tactics game because it has Fallout in the name. Wait,
It's true.
no. So Fallout Tactics is a game based in the same engine as the original Fallout games. So it has a 2D isometric view, and in fact, it actually runs a lot of the same systems. So it has the same kind of the same GURP system that the original Fallout games used, the same like skills and perks and everything like that. But it's all wrapped up into an actually really nice little tactics game.
Okay, hold on 1 second here. Sorry. I'm on its Wikipedia page. It is Fallout Tactics Brotherhood of Steel. Right?
Yes.
Not to be confused with Fallout Brotherhood of Steel. Which is an action role-playing game. So literally the fact that tactics is in the name is literally the difference between these two games.
No, the difference between those two games is Fallout Tactics is a tactics game and is fun. Fallout Brotherhood of Steel is an action RPG and is not fun.
Okay.
That is the difference between these two games.
Okay.
I want to make that perfectly clear. Do not buy Fallout Brotherhood of Steel for, I think, PlayStation 1, was it? Don't. Yeah.
PlayStation 2 and Xbox, yeah.
It was, oh, yeah, PlayStation 2. But don't do it. Don't do it. Don't waste your money. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your energy. It is not worth it.
Okay, hold on. On its Wikipedia page, just Fallout Brotherhood of Steel. As a spin-off, Brotherhood of Steel's gameplay greatly differs from that of other Fallout games. The gameplay is linear and not open world.
Yes.
It's just the fact that it says not open world is like
it's an important distinction to make because even Fallout Tactics has an open world.
Okay.
So I don't know if you're familiar with the original games, but essentially there's an overworld of the area of the United States that you're wandering, the area of the actual wasteland, and on that you can go as you're walking around to different towns or missions. You can encounter random events that may be battles or interesting things that happen, like encountering some knights and talking about a holy hand grenade and blowing up a rabbit. Actually happens in the second one. Awesome, not awesome little event. But Tactics continues with that trend. So essentially, you have a team of Brotherhood of Steel members, and I'm trying to remember what the actual story is. It's been a while since I played it. But you're essentially going out into the world to protect the Brotherhood of Steel from big threat. Ooh, basic kind of storytelling archetypes. But during this, you can encounter all sorts of different events, find new characters. Like you can actually get a Pip-Boy on the team,
Okay.
like the little Fallout mascot.
Right. Right.
You can find him in the wasteland and get him on your team. It also has like drivable vehicles which your guys can shoot out of, which is really awesome. All the things, all the comedy, black comedy, and all the interesting stuff that happens in the first two games, you see more of in Tactics, and it's actually kind of cool because you can also change Tactics from a turn-based to a real-time. Now, real-time is it's difficult as hell, mostly because you don't really have a lot of time to set anything up if you're doing real-time.
Right.
But just the fact that it gives you the option is still pretty cool. And so essentially it takes everything that everybody loved about the first two Fallout games, and then it builds a tactics game with it. And it's just a really nice, sweet little package and a lot of fun to play, and I highly recommend it to anybody who likes tactical RPGs. It's worth playing.
Okay. Well,
what's the difference between it? Because I played the first two and I had a collection that came with all three, so I played Tactics barely. But why? Like the first two are Tactics games also, so why is that one called Tactics?
The reason why this one's called Tactics is because in the first game you couldn't really control a team of characters. You had your character and a companion character. In Tactics Advanced, and even then, like, there was a different feel to the first two games compared to Tactics. Like Tactics, you have a full team, and you can essentially it plays much the same way in terms of like building up your stats and putting in your equipment. But just having the full team and it has a higher level of difficulty. So I mean, in the first game, if you ran up to a super mutant with a machine gun, you're probably going to grip your sheds. Well, imagine 7 super mutants with machine guns just sitting around waiting for you. That's kind of stuff you'd see in Brotherhood of Steel.
Okay.
And Fallout Tactics. So, I mean, it's Fallout Tactics, Brotherhood of Steel.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Okay.
So, yeah, so pretty much anytime I say Brotherhood of Steel without saying don't play this game, I'm probably talking about Fallout.
Okay.
Simply because I try to ignore the fact that Brotherhood of Steel ever came out.
Ever exists.
Yeah, it's kind of like Tremors 3 and 4. Didn't happen.
Whoa! Whoa! Let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Okay. Tremors. Tremors 3 is super important. Tremors 4 sets up the entire Tremors storyline. Okay.
Didn't happen.
Oh my god. Okay. Well, do we have any more RPG or tactical RPGs we quickly want to mention? I mean, there's so many we haven't covered. Obviously, Fire Emblem, things like that.
There is one other one I would like to mention, and there's a lot of Japanese ones we just did not even touch today.
Right.
But
Atlas alone has like 50 of them. So
right. Yeah, we're clearly gonna have to do like a part 2 and 3 of this.
Yeah, easily. Yeah. Just for Atlas games alone.
Right.
But and I think the last one I want to quickly touch on is another Western one, which is Jagged Alliance. Now, this is another game that's seen a modern remake in the form of what was it? In the form of Jagged Alliance. Pull up my list here. Yeah, the form of Jagged Alliance Back in Action. Of course, it would be Back in Action. But essentially, the general story of Jagged Alliance games are you are a leader of a company of mercenaries who has been tasked with retaking usually an island back from an oppressive dictator to give to another potentially oppressive dictator. And that's really not your problem. They're paying you. And so what you have is a really just expansive game world. Once again, pretty much open world. You can go anywhere and liberate whatever you want. You got a bunch of different characters with really great personalities. Everything from kind of like the, stereotypical, I'm a doctor, I'm here to help people, I don't really want to get involved fighting, to a Russian man who is probably literally insane. Like, in fact, you can run a whole team of crazy people and just charge an island. It's pretty goddamn awesome.
Yeah.
but there's a lot of like like you can actually C4 buildings, you can snipe from rooftops, you can essentially call in all sorts of different weaponry and hire from the local populace, liberate different areas, fight against like counterattacks. It it pretty much has it all if you want more of a persistent game world for a tactical RPG.
Okay. Well, I've never even heard of that game, so
Which disappoints me.
I know I'm a terrible
I don't even
person.
think I've ever heard of that game.
Yeah, I'm
Well,
disappointed.
hey, it was released on DOS in 1994 and re-released on 2009 on the Nintendo DS.
There was a DS release. I forgot about that.
Yes.
I
See,
have that
Thomas
somewhere. Sure.
did a lot of PC gaming back in the 90s.
I did
CC
too,
is-
but I was 6 then.
Yeah.
So was I. What was your excuse?
I was too busy
I was
playing.
playing Diablo.
Yeah, I was too busy.
Diablo? Fair. No,
I
I'll
was
give it
I
to
was
you.
too busy. I was too busy playing freaking Road Rash, okay, and Sonic the Hedgehog 3. So,
That didn't stop me. I had a Genesis as well.
well, I mean, okay.
What's
okay.
your excuse, Mr. Brady?
Well, gosh, that's just what I was doing, man. I was so into Road Rash 3 and Street Fighter 2. It's like, what else do I have time for? Nothing. It's like I could play any game, or I could play Super Street Fighter 2. Well, I'm gonna play Super Street Fighter 2. So.
Wait, not Tournament Action Hero Champion Edition? Wow.
Actually, the versions I played were Street Fighter 2 Championship Edition on the Sega Genesis, and then Super Street Fighter 2: The New Challengers on the SNES. But I now do own almost every version of Street Fighter 2 that exists. I even own the 3DO version, and I don't even own a 3DO.
You don't need to.
I don't. I really don't. I really don't. But okay, well, back to that's the main subject here: tactical RPGs. So yeah, obviously there's a lot we didn't mention, and we'll save that for part 2 and 3. I mean, we didn't even talk about really go into the Fire Emblem games, or the Front Mission games, or the Final Fantasy Tactics games. But there you go. There's a couple of tactical RPGs. Hopefully those were some that people either haven't played. So let us know, what tactical RPG games do you guys like? What ones do you want us to talk about? And we'll talk about them. It's that simple.
Is it? It is that simple, right?
It is that simple. Really, I mean,
That easy.
it's really that easy. People say, hey, we want you guys to do these videos. And we're like, okay, can do. So, okay. All right. Well, as always, guys, thanks for listening.